What happens when a night out turns into a pivotal legal case with ripples through policing, community relations, and the courts? Let's delve into the murder of Henry Nowak. Hi, I'm Leah, feeling curious about today's complex and heartbreaking topic.
And I'm Garrett, excited to explore this with you. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
Today we're diving into the complex and tragic case of Henry Nowak's murder in 2025. The facts are intense and the questions it raises are, genuinely tough.
Okay, so here's where we start. I had a friend who got pulled into a minor legal situation a couple of years back. Nothing violent. It was basically a noise complaint that spiraled into a misunderstanding about trespass because a gate was half open at a block party. He was really scared of the process. Interviews, paperwork, that feeling one wrong word could make things worse. It resolved peacefully after a community officer slowed down, listened, and realized it was a mix-up. The whole thing got cautioned and closed. What stuck with me was how emotionally heavy even a small case felt for everyone involved. The contrast to this case is massive. Here we have a young man, Henry Nowak, who never made it home, and layers of decisions by bystanders and authorities that carried life and death weight. My friend's situation showed me how institutions can de-escalate when they get the facts straight early. With Henry, we're forced to sit with what happens when the facts are chaotic and time is brutally short.
Let's open the book on this. Henry Nowak was an 18-year-old British student first year studying accountancy at the University of Southampton. In late December 2025, he'd been out at the Hobbit pub. Toxicology later showed he was below the drink drive limit. The person who stabbed him was Vikram Digwa, a 23-year-old British Sikh man. The court later found that he carried 2 blades that night, a small kirpan under clothing and a larger dagger worn externally. Another person you'll hear about is Kiran Kaur, Digwa's mother. She was later convicted of assisting an offender for hiding the weapon. When we mention kirpan, that's a Sikh ceremonial knife that symbolizes spiritual duty and the protection of truth. A related term that came up in court was the Nihang order, a Sikh warrior tradition. Some symbolic items are associated with it, but they're not faith requirements for all Sikhs. The larger, conspicuously worn dagger in this case was linked by an expert to that tradition, not to a universal religious obligation.
And self-defense comes up a lot here. Quick plain English version. In UK law, self-defense is basically using reasonable force if you genuinely believe it's necessary to protect yourself or someone else. Reasonable means it matches the threat. If someone shoves you, you can't escalate to lethal force unless there's a serious threat of death or grave harm. Jurors are asked to weigh intent and proportionality. There's also an alternative to murder called manslaughter that can apply when there isn't intent to kill or cause really serious harm, or where other partial defenses come into play. In this case, the jury was told to consider manslaughter as an alternative. They still convicted for murder, meaning they found an intent to kill or cause serious harm. That's pretty central here.
All right, here's where we begin in detail. It's late December 2025 in the Portswood area of Southampton. Portswood is a student-dense neighborhood and lively at night with people walking home. Henry had been out at the Hobbit pub, and as he was making his way through the Belmont Road area, he encountered Vikram Digwa. There's a short Snapchat clip that matters. Henry lightly teases him, calling him a bad man. The judge later called that cheeky, not threatening, not racist. In the clip, Digwa replies, "I am a bad man," and he's walking away. That little video is one of those moments where you can freeze frame the vibe right before everything changes. It showed no immediate physical threat from Henry.
Next up, the escalation. There were no eyewitnesses to the stabbing itself. What we know comes from a mosaic, forensic blood patterning and mapping on the ground, neighbor accounts of hearing Henry cry out that he'd been stabbed and was dying, the brief pre-incident video Henry took, videos Digwa filmed afterward, and later police body-worn camera footage when officers arrived. Forensics indicated Henry had already been stabbed and was trying to escape. One detail that really sticks, a blood trail, showed he attempted to climb onto a bin and over a fence, suggesting he was fleeing despite catastrophic injuries. Prosecutors argued that after the initial violence, Digwa chose to aggressively pursue him. That phrasing matters because pursuit undercuts a picture of pure self-defense. The weapon used was a roughly 21-centimeter Sikh dagger, not the small concealed kirpan under the shirt, but the larger blade worn externally. An expert, Professor Gurnam Singh, a sociologist who testified about Sikh practices, explained that carrying a kirpan can be a religious obligation for some observant Sikhs, but the conspicuous larger blade isn't a strict requirement and was, in this context, associated with Nihang symbolism. Why does that detail matter? Because the object wasn't just any knife. It had cultural weight that later became part of a public conversation about religious liberty and public safety.
Police then arrived to a chaotic scene. Henry is on the ground, gravely injured. On body cam, he says, "I can't breathe," repeatedly. Medical evidence later explained why. His lungs were filling with blood from a chest wound. He also tells officers 9 times that he'd been stabbed. In the footage, an officer responds, "Don't think you have, mate." They handcuff him, and crucially, Henry becomes unresponsive before any call for emergency medical services was made. That sequence is one of the most shocking aspects of the case. It led to a referral to the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which investigates serious incidents and complaints against police in England and Wales. Meanwhile, officers were also engaging with the suspect's claims. Digwa alleged he was pursued, punched, and racially abused, and that a turban was pulled off. The court later rejected those claims as fabricated. There were no injuries to Digwa consistent with being attacked, and the judge said he was sure Henry hadn't said anything racist.
To add to the complexity, there's a chain of events right after the stabbing that's unusually complicated. After the violence, Digwa called his parents and they arrived before police. His mother, Kiran Kaur, took the dagger and later hid it at their home. That led to her conviction for assisting an offender. Police also allowed Digwa to meet his brother at the scene. In a covertly recorded Punjabi conversation, the brother suggested he claim self-defense, and at one point, Digwa said he couldn't claim self-defense if there were street security cameras. That line matters. Jurors could read it as consciousness of guilt, a worry that independent video would contradict his story. And then another aggravating element. Digwa filmed Henry as he tried to flee, and again as he lay dying. The court treated that as showing callousness, and it counted against him at sentencing.
Here's where we go to court. In May 2026 at Southampton Crown Court, the judge, William Mousley, reminded jurors they could consider manslaughter if they weren't sure about intent to kill or cause serious harm. The prosecutor, Nicholas Lobenberg, a King's counsel, showed the Snapchat clip and emphasized that Henry was below the drink-drive limit. That undercut any idea that confusion at the scene was just intoxication. The jury retired in late May 2026 and returned with a verdict, guilty of murder for Vikram Digwa and guilty of assisting an offender for Kiran Kaur. The self-defense claim was rejected, the alleged racist abuse was rejected, and the supposed attack on the defendant by Henry wasn't supported by evidence. In June 2026, the judge sentenced Digwa to life with a minimum term of 21 years, highlighting the filming as an aggravating factor and calling his account convincing but wholly false. He also said Digwa had brought shame on his family and other Sikhs and had caused racial tension. There were later requests to the Attorney General to review the sentence under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. That process lets certain sentences be referred to the Court of Appeal if they appear too low. At the last reporting we have, there wasn't a public outcome on those requests.
Public reaction came fast and loud. The police response was referred to the IOPC, and in June 2026, Hampshire police released the body cam footage, which showed the arrival, the interactions, the handcuffing, and Henry's final moments. Protests followed in Southampton. 2 arrests were reported, and the force said 11 officers and a police dog were injured during disorder. Political figures weighed in. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, called the case awful and shocking and welcomed the IOPC investigation. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, said in Parliament that police seemed more concerned with the accusation of racism than with helping Henry. Robert Jenrick, from Reform UK raised it in the Commons, called it a scandal, and proposed banning ceremonial knives from public carry. That sparked controversy, especially because it touches on articles of faith for Sikhs. Suella Braverman called for release of the body cam. That happened quickly. Nigel Farage posted a video alleging two-tier policing, the idea that different groups get different treatment. And an unusual global note, Elon Musk publicly condemned the officers and offered to fund a wrongful death lawsuit and even a private prosecution. That level of outside attention is a real curveball in a local UK case.
Community responses within Sikh organizations were notable too. The Supreme Sikh Council announced a review of safeguards around carrying ceremonial knives and planned stronger education on responsibilities. The message was about condemning the crime while protecting the dignity of faith practice. The UK Sikh Federation reported a rise in anti-Sikh hate crimes after the trial and wrote to the Home Secretary asking for strengthened protections in law. That shows a feedback loop we see in high-profile cases. A crime by one person gets misused to blame an entire community, and leaders step in to separate the two while addressing safety and education. I want to underline that the expert testimony helped clarify a key misunderstanding. Wearing a larger external dagger isn't a strict Sikh requirement, and linking that specific choice to faith as a whole would be inaccurate and unfair.
Leah, can I ask why you think the self-defense claim resonated with some people online at first, even though the court found it fabricated? I mean, what's the pull there?
Totally fair question. Real talk. Self-defense is one of those claims that slots into a simple mental template. I was attacked. I protected myself. In chaotic scenes before forensics and full statements, that narrative can seem plausible. But in this case, the lack of injuries to the defendant, the pursuit suggested by the blood trail, and the covertly recorded coaching on self-defense undermined it. Add in the pre-incident video showing the defendant walking away and replying, "I am a bad man," to Henry's cheeky tease. That doesn't suggest an immediate physical threat. So why do you think people still hung on to it for a bit?
I guess it's the speed of online judgment. A serious allegation plus a sliver of ambiguity equals instant theories. And the presence of a religious article, the Kirpan, added a layer people argued over without the nuance. That's where the expert testimony mattered, distinguishing a small concealed Kirpan, which can be an article of faith, from a larger conspicuously worn dagger that isn't a general requirement. Without that nuance, debate can get loud and not productive. Also, seeing the police initially latch on to the racism allegation in the body cam footage likely made some folks assume there must be something there. Later, the court record showed those claims were false. But in the moment, people magnify what they see first. It's kind of how our brains work under stress. We anchor to early info.
And that brings us to police procedures. There's this thorny issue captured on camera. Officers are trying to parse allegations of racism, which are always serious, while a person on the ground is saying he's been stabbed and can't breathe. The triage calculus has to prioritize immediate medical jeopardy. If someone says they've been stabbed, the default should be treat it like it's true until proved otherwise. The IOPC is there to evaluate those decisions. It's an independent oversight body designed to look at whether policy and training lined up with what happened. The force has said that facts aired in court clarified who was lying and why officers didn't immediately understand the situation, but that doesn't erase the urgency we see on video. Those are crucial minutes.
I hear you. Scenes like this are noisy, literally and figuratively. Still, 9 statements of "I've been stabbed" and those repeated "I can't breathe, please," handcuffing a mortally wounded person who's telling you they're dying just hits different. I'm not gonna lie, watching the footage was rough. The criminal trial made clear who did what and why the self-defense claim collapsed. The IOPC process now has to answer the operational piece. How do you get scene control and safety without losing sight of medical triage? That's a training and culture question right there.
Switching gears just a little to pop culture ripples. Nigel Farage posted a video arguing there's 2-tier policing. That phrase suggests different standards for different groups. Elon Musk's comments were unusually direct for an international tech figure. He called the officers disgusting, pressed for their firing, and offered to fund legal actions. High-profile voices like that can amplify public attention and harden narratives before investigations finish. Their reach changes the tempo. It can accelerate transparency, like the quick release of the body cam, but it can also inflame tensions. It's a double-edged sword.
Counterfactual moment. What if the attending officers had immediately accepted Henry's claims of being stabbed and prioritized medical aid? First, we have to be careful. We can't say with certainty it would have changed the outcome. Fatal chest wounds, especially those that flood the lungs, are among the toughest to survive without instant advanced care. But earlier recognition could have meant a faster call to emergency medical services, quicker airway management attempts, and earlier bleeding control. Even if the ultimate outcome was the same, that pathway would have aligned better with best practice. Treat the most life-threatening thing first. It also could have relieved some of the public outrage, because people often accept hard outcomes when they can see everything possible was done in the right order.
Let's imagine the social ripple in that scenario. If medics are called immediately and scene management focuses on preserving life while securing the suspect at a safe distance, the later debate might shift. We might still argue about self-defense claims, and we'd still have the covert conversation with the brother and the missing weapon to sort through. But the IOPC focus could be narrower, more about evidence handling and less about missed medical triage. And the family's public statements, which thanked the murder investigation team while condemning Henry's treatment as inhumane and degrading, might have landed differently. It doesn't rewrite the crime. It does kind of rewrite the institutional chapter.
There's also the what if of cameras. If comprehensive street security cameras had captured the confrontation and stabbing, the suspect's self-defense claim might have been untenable immediately. That could have shaped both on-scene police decisions and the speed of the investigation. Instead, the case relied on overlapping recordings: Henry's pre-incident clip, Digwa's post-incident videos, neighbor ear witnesses, and the body cam aftermath. Modern cases really do hinge on these audiovisual layers. It's wild how that works out. But a missing piece during the crucial moments left room for confusion right when clarity mattered most.
So there's your big picture: a young life lost, a jury weighing intent and rejecting self-defense, and an oversight spotlight on first response choices. I'm holding on to the hope that clear facts, transparent review, and thoughtful community education can reduce both harm and backlash next time.
Stay curious, ask why, and keep space for nuance. That's a thread worth pulling on every time.